Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. This time we're talking about something pretty interesting, and that is if whether or not the OG cell chain can compete once set 9 rolls around. The OG cell chain and cell in general has gotten a lot of support ever since we've seen the set 9 reviews and spoilers. We're going to talk about that in today's video. Let's talk about the merits, whether or not it can be playable. That being said, guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you want to help support the channel, lots of ways you can do that. Down below, we've got the Patreon. We've also got the Crosswell TCG merch store. And finally, guys, if you want to buy any of the cards you see in today's video, make sure to use my links to either TCG Player or Bearded Collectibles. That helps the channel out a great bit. With that being said, we're getting right into this discussion. So, Growing Evil Lifeform Cell and Perfect Force Cell. These cards were such a force to be reckoned with, starting in just the set 2 days. In set 2, you had the triangle of set 1 Vegeta with the crit. You also had Soul Striker Son Goku, and you had Cell Chain kind of rounding out that triangle. This was a relatively oppressive deck back then, but it was kind of weird because if you knew how to play around the Cell Chain, it actually wasn't that bad. It was a little bit harder for Vegeta to play around it because Vegeta would take his own life and then get his hand capped to 3. But for Soul Striker, for example, if you were to stay at a higher life total for most of the game, use your hand to spam the board and apply pressure to Cell, you generally had a good time. But Cell really destroyed players who didn't know how to play around it. And keep in mind, guys, if you're newer here, if you've only been playing Dragon Ball for, I don't know, the past 2 or 3 sets, there were no counterplays back then except for Cold Bloodlust, and Frieza army leaders weren't super popular. So keeping that in mind, whenever you drop 3-drop Cell, as long as you had the 17 and 18s in your hand, you basically got to resolve this with no problem. So real quick, what they do, Growing Evil Lifeform Cell is a 3-drop. You put an Android 17 under it to go into a 5-drop Cell from your deck. The 5-drop Cell comes into play, pops one of your opponent's battle cards, also draws a card, then has a free Union Absorb ability to go into the Perfect Force Cell you see here. And when you do play Perfect Force Cell, your opponent discards down to 3 cards in hand if your leader is an Android. When this deck was most dominant was also when Storm was really dominant. Like, it was kind of a back and forth between Androids and Storm. If Androids got to go first and Cell Chain you, they were in a really good position. If Storm got to go first and just, Storm aggro you, they were in the good position. And once the ban list came around that really neutered Storm, they also decided to put Growing Evil Lifeform Cell to 1 on the ban list. So ever since then, we've got a lot of Cell players, a lot of Android players asking for their Growing Evil Lifeform Cell back to 4. And when you compare it to some other bombs in the game, honestly, Perfect Force Cell doesn't seem like the craziest or most powerful thing, but that's what the whole point of this video is. We're going to talk about the merits, the pros and cons to playing this. So what in set 9 is really breathing new life into the OG Cell Chain? Well, we talked about this before in a few videos. I'm going to go over it real quickly here. Dr. Gero, Progenitor of Terror, is the new green-yellow super combo coming out, and it reads, if your leader card is green or yellow, which pretty much all the Android leaders are, when you combo this card from your hand, choose up to 1 green or yellow battle card with an energy cost of 4 or less from your deck and place in your drop area, then shuffle your deck. So as long as that Growing Evil Lifeform Cell is not in your life and it's in your deck, you can dump it to the drop area. Then you can play Dr. Mew Weapon Surplus, which is a 2-drop 15k, so pretty good stats. Auto Burst 3 when you play this card, choose up to 1 green Android card with energy cost of 3 or more, or 1 green extra card with energy cost of 2 or less in your drop area, and add it to your hand. So that is basically a turn 2 combo to get your Growing Evil Lifeform Cell back to your hand, but there are problems with that. The Mew can get counterplayed. You have to kind of waste a super combo to get your Cell to the drop area. Like I said before, the Cell can be in your life, but if the combo does go off without a hitch, you get the Cell to your hand and you're able to Cell Chain as early as turn 3, assuming you have the 17 and 18 in your hand, and assuming you have plenty of 5 and 7-drop Cells in your deck. That was always kind of a problem with the deck, even in the set 2, set 3 days, that not having the 5s and 7s in your deck, if you drew too many of them, had to charge them, you could kind of run into a problem there. But this is a way to do it. Now we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's really going to hinder the Cell Chain going into set 9. So most colors in this game have a counterplay battle card that deals with low cost battle cards. Green's example, Vegeta the Cruel. Red's example, Kaioken Son Goku, which is actually going to see a lot more playability with Cooler, because in Cooler, when you play that Kaioken Goku, you minus 15 a battle card, or minus 10 one and minus 5 another, and then you draw a card. Chopper the Trickster puts it in rest mode, so you technically still can Cell Chain your opponent. That's not that big of a deal. But Blue also has the Undying Link Son Gohan, that will bounce the Cell back to your hand, and black has the new Deborah coming out that prevents Cell from activating its skills when used for counterplay. So all these different things in almost each of these colors gives this Cell a hard time. Another thing to look at are the what I call mini counterplays. You have Focus Breakthrough, Absolute Release Ball, you have Beerus Ball, all these different things, and Super Kamehameha. All these different things really hurt Cell. Now, to be fair, the opponent does have to be at 4 life to use these cards, so it's not always going to be live. Another thing I do want to mention is that you can actually use these cards to your advantage if you are trying to play the OG Cell Chain. And the number one thing with that is going to be Focus Breakthrough. The majority of leaders you're going to play with the OG Cell Chain, if you choose to play it, they're going to be green. It's going to be green, yellow, Surge, Cell. It's going to be set to Android 1817, maybe the new Dr. Gero leader coming out, all of which are green. So if you can get to that 4 or less life, you can activate Focus Breakthrough to stop a card like Vegeta the Cruel, or stop a card like Kaioken Goku, or the Undying Link Future Gohan. That is a valid option for you, but I can't even think. I think the only Android leader that has Self Awaken is probably Mira from like set 4, and he's not green. He can use Super Kamehameha, to be fair, but I don't think he can use a lot of the other cards to help support the Cell Chain. So kind of like a moot point. The point is, the green and yellow Cell leaders you're going to be playing don't have inherent Self Awaken, so getting that Focus Breakthrough live can be pretty challenging. So that's one thing we're going to knack up to a negative point for the Cell Chain. Next up, you got to look at all these other counterplays. We've got Hidden Potential, we've got Denial of Hope, we've got You're Wide Open, and Preemptive Strike, just to name a few of them. All these counterplays hit 4 costs and less. They pretty much prevent you from dropping your 3-drop Cell, and they're live as early as turn 2. So that is another big problem for the Cell Chain. There really is no workaround to these cards. There's not really much in like a green Android deck you can play to counter these extra cards. The best thing you can do, which really isn't that good, if you're playing green yellow Cell, you could use Swift Retaliation Cooler, which is the 3-cost Bad Rain Laser if your leader is yellow. But that means you have to Cell Chain your opponent on turn 6, and that is pretty late. There's a lot of other powerful things you can do on turn 6. I honestly think that the other successor cards you're going to be able to play are probably going to be much more powerful. And that being said, with successor in mind, if you are playing that new Cell Chain, or the OG Cell Chain with the new Cell stuff or new successor stuff, the 7-cost Cell is pretty awkward. There's one 7-cost successor that you can play, but that's only if your leader's an Android 13. The rest of them are 8 costs and 9 costs and 6 costs. So 7 is going to be pretty awkward. You have to have a 7 and a 2-drop on the board, and most of the Cell lists that I've seen aren't really playing 2-drops. So that does seem relatively awkward. Next up, guys, what I want to talk about, Gogeta 7 compared to Perfect Force Cell. Now, everyone who's always asked for Cell to come back off the ban list, they've always referenced Gogeta 7, and I think it's a very fair point. So Gogeta 7 obviously has like 14 different keyword skills. When you play it, your opponent shuffles their entire hand back into their deck and draws 3 random cards, as opposed to Cell, which lets them keep their 3 best cards. Now Gogeta has the added cost of critting a life, but this card is so game ending that's not really such a cost. Also has Triple Strike compared to Cell's Double Strike. Comes out for 5 when Cell can come out for 3. But the thing with Gogeta is there are really no hard answers to the card. There's nothing that you can play that will stop Gogeta 7's ability. Like Perfect Force Cell, for example, that card can be Frost Poisoned. That card can be Cold Bloodlusted. Gogeta Revive has Deflect and Barrier, so you can't Frost Poison it, you can't Bloodlust it, you can, I guess, Mutaito it, you can Chomp with the Trickster it, but again, neither of those things are stopping Gogeta's effect from destroying your hand, where Cell does have answers to having your hand destroyed. Obviously, luckily, Mutaito is hitting the ban list. That's a pretty thankful thing for hand control players in general. But with Gogeta 7 being so unanswerable and arguably much more powerful than Cell Chain, you know, that's why a lot of people argued that the Cell Chain should come back to full power. But that being said, the point I want to bring up with this is, if you look at the Pro Play Tour Orlando event, Surge Piccolo came in 1st and 3rd place. Now, the tournament just before that, a week before that, Surge Piccolo was a very popular deck. It made several spots in top 16, and it was sporting Gogeta Hero Revive. But a week later, going to the PPG event, there were the 1st and 3rd place lists were not playing Gogeta 7. It was not anywhere in their deck list. They opted for a much smaller, I guess a lower to the ground hand control build with like Zamasu, Goku Black, and other, you know, kind of lower cost hand control cards. So my point with that is, if Gogeta 7 was deemed to be such low impact, and I talked about this in my Top Cut breakdown, it's less energy efficient, it costs a lot of energy, and if you tap out for it, get chomped with the Trickster, you can pretty easily lose in the crackback. If Gogeta 7 is such a low impact card, will Perfect Force Cell really shake up the format that much, even if you're able to play it a lot more consistently? Probably not, because again, Gogeta 7 is arguably the stronger card, and all the different things we talked about, Perfect Force Cell is pretty easily answerable, or at least the cards in the chain are much more easily answerable. Specifically, Growing Evil Lifeform Cell, the 3 cost, is pretty vulnerable. Your Perfect Force Cell doesn't have any type of protection, no barrier, no deflect, anything like that. So those are generally the things that I'm thinking about when I'm trying to build a deck around the cell chain, the OG cell chain, and kind of determine whether or not it's viable. I honestly think, guys, and you can quote me on this, I really think that the evolve of Perfect Force Cell for 2 greens and 4 colorless energy, I actually think that's going to be more relevant than Union absorbing this through the 3 cost. That's actually the less vulnerable way to play this card, funnily enough, because if you're playing the Surge Cell Leader, you can actually just play the new 3-drop cell from the drop area. When it comes into play, your opponent discards a card. It comes in for 1 if you have an Android 17 on the board, and then you can evolve into this card, because we've seen cards like Fu Shrouded and Mystery, Dimensional Banisher Fu, or Dark Banisher Fu, I should say. Cards like that cost 4 and 6, but they're kind of game ending in the later parts of the game. We've seen those cards dominate. So I can honestly see the 6 evolve of this being more relevant than the Union Absorb chain. But guys, those are basically my opinions. I don't think OG Cell chain is going to do too much, even though it is a lot more playable. I think people will experiment with it, but that remains to be seen. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.